3, 2, 1, we're live. Hi, I'm here with Machris today. Machris is the coordinator of the SocDem Asia network. SocDem Asia is a network of social democratic parties and institutions and individuals in Asia. She's also the president of Akbayan Citizens Action Party, and in the past she was working in various outfits. You helped found the youth of Akbayan, the founding chair woman, and you also worked in an urban poor NGO, right? So I'm very happy to have you here today, Machris. It's a great honor and pleasure. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? What got you into politics?
Well, thanks for having me, Johannes. I'm very glad to be here for this podcast. I've not had another employer aside from the party and the movement where I came out after college. This urban poor NGO is also affiliated with Akbayan. But when we were in the university, there's this ongoing war in Mindanao. So this is the southern Philippines, where student activists were campaigning for Stop the War campaign. And they were inviting us for other universities, for other university tours, and then their concerts. So primarily, I wasn't there for the war or the advocacy against the war, but they are doing cool concerts for a cause.
What year was that?
2000 and 2001.
All right,
so this was during the Estrada administration.
Almost 20 years ago.
Yes, 20 years ago. And my intention then was, okay, go to the concert, donate if you can, look at the advocacy booths, and that's it. Like a fair in school. But then you get to hear people from Mindanao, because usually the evacuees or witnesses of the war would go to the concert and do testimonials. So from one concert to the other, I'll be part of those going from room to room, asking students to be informed about our cause against the war. Sometime later, there will be corruption cases against the president then, Estrada. So we will be part of an anti-corruption campaign, and that really deepened our activism. Makes you feel you are greater than what you do in your classroom. You are doing something beyond yourself, involved in a greater cause. And then the student movement then was also getting organized from campus politics. So from the policy on war to students getting engaged about issues in the campuses, and then having a president do an in-your-face type of leadership that does not speak to you. So as ideal as that, you go to politics and you become active. I've never looked back. I just realized now that you said it's already 20 years.
Yeah, time flies, right?
So that those 20 years started in the university, and now from the urban poor organization that I served, and then the party, I've never had another employer, and I think I'm happy from that time, the anti-war invitation, concert invitation to what we are working here in Akbayan.
So no regrets.
Yes, I'm so far happy that this has brought me to my job now.
Yeah, right. So and I mean, like, just looking back, are there many people that are still there, like that you still work with, like that you met not only at concerts but back in the day? I mean, is it like a big family, and or how is it like working today?
Well, from the concerts that were recruited then, most of us are also are working in the party. But over the years, of course, there are university students. One job I have in the urban poor organization was recruit students to join us in educating urban poor communities about rights to housing. There was a big demolition campaign back then, and we will go to study circles with families about relocation, about what are the rights that they must know. And then we were training students in campuses all over the Philippines for voters' educations, elections, alternative classroom learning. I think these sorts of experiences have also enlarged my family. My father is a military man. My mother is an entrepreneurial mom, a 24-hour mom. But she sells things.
Okay. What kind of things?
At the same time, no, she cooks.
Yeah.
She sells. She buys and sells. And my father is in the Navy. Eventually, this family of student activists, NGO workers, I had to introduce them.
Sure.
And I have very good parents who are very open to my political exposure.
I see.
And now, after 20 years, some of my batchmates are still in the NGO communities. Some are still working in the party. Others are in the private sector.
Okay.
But are also doing community work. And over the years, I've known politicians, good and bad.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I've had my own role models, not only politicians, but also analysts, thinkers, artists, which I think as part of the movement, our movement for what we believe in, it's not solely concentrated supposedly on politicians. And anybody can be a politician anyway, but role models over the years change. And you get desensitized about political figures when you meet them and you discuss with them. So in the party we have that. We have all sorts of mentors, role models from different walks of life, from urban poor leaders, peasant communities, market vendors, trade unionists,
Sure.
Feminists, politicians. But millennials now, well, we can talk about this millennial phenomenon. There's certain sense of creativity and energy that is also different from my 20 years of experience.
I was going to say, like, by now it's probably not only the case that you still have many mentors in the party and in the movement, but that you also are a mentor, I can imagine, of sorts, no? I mean, like...
I try.
Yeah, right? So, but that's actually an interesting question. I was going to ask you, so what do you... I mean, like, how would you say, if you look at young people and how they are engaging with traditional, parties and the movement and people like you, or even broader and more general with politics in general. I mean, like, what do you see? I mean, how does that compare to what you saw, let's say, 20 years ago? I mean, like, how is it the same or how is it different?
I think what is the same is there's a certain idealism, and I think for young people, your cynicism will come later. and if your cynicism comes early, then we're really in deep trouble. No?
Then we're in trouble. Yeah.
I think that sense of idealism, that sense of putting yourself out there without, the baggage of too many risks, comes with your youth, and with that also comes a different passion in activism. I think that stays the same for generations. What changes is the form of expression, issues that come at play that motivates young people to be active in politics. What's different also now is the way of communicating.
Social media, etc. Right?
Yes. Say when we were campaigning for the anti-war campaign in Mindanao, we will go classroom to classroom.
Yeah.
You have a script that you say from classroom to join the campaign. It still happens now. You
No
go
Facebook,
classroom.
much more legwork.
But now there's Facebook, there's WhatsApp, there's Telegram, Instagram. Before, when you go to a meeting, you exchange time at a place a week before and be there. Now you don't need to see another person.
But then I mean, like, that's a good point. I mean, like, there's obviously some advantages when it comes to campaigning or to organizing, with the help of social media and those kind of modern communications technologies. But on the other hand, one criticism of that is also that the way that, for instance, the attention span usually is shorter than before, or people like, we're not even talking about the phenomenon of fake news and people like falling for all kinds of propaganda stuff, or even participating in that sort of thing. But what do you observe there?
Well, too many people are impatient now, and these are not only young people. Because you have access to information, it comes handy. Too many things are quicker now, and still makes you impatient still. But the beauty, I think, of how people are communicating now is that it presents an opportunity to connect with more, and it presents channels of creativity that you cannot do before. See expressions of memes, posters now, your own quotable quotes now. You don't need to quote Martin Luther King. You don't need to quote Marx. You make your own quote, and if it clicks, and especially for a cause, it speaks to a generation that you understand. You don't need a study circle to talk about the great leaders of our time. You talk with your peers, and then you get inspired. And the downside is you can also be fooled. You can also be introduced to the not great people of our time. So critical thinking also, as always, is needed in this. And with new technology, new communication, I think we stick that education is still the baseline.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm happy that you said some positive things first, because otherwise I would have said it makes us sound very, very old when we talk about this kind of stuff. No,
maybe later when I start to rant about this is not anymore working.
Yeah, right. No, but then I was also going to ask you, I mean, about your experience regarding analytical skills when you see like young people that are maybe interested in politics and start to work in more junior positions. What kind of skills do they come with? Because having memes and people like getting it and having the cultural references, etc., that's one thing. It's all fine and well, but that doesn't really, in my view, replace any analysis of or any analytical skills that you need for understanding what's going on in our societies, and so my question would be, when you see people getting out of university, what are they usually like? Are they critical? Is there a lot of critical thinking, or is there a lack thereof, or what do you see?
Well, if you don't talk about politics solely, I think there's critical thinking, and then politics comes in, and then you tend to shut down because it's too chaotic. I think people are critical now because they know that they have access to check if you're talking right or you're fooling them. But it's not as maximized as we wanted to, because people are also biased on what their community
exactly echo chambers and all of this
had made them comfortable
exactly
on the opinions that they have. What skills do university graduates have now? Well, it differs, of course, from the education system in different areas, but I think the access now to information, you don't need a university diploma to be able to be as skillful and knowledgeable, to deepen your knowledge, yes, to upgrade and be at par. But unlike before, that you are so clueless if you don't attend any class. No, now we have urban poor leaders, we have out of school youth organized now, that speaks well, that are analytically good, and more importantly for our movement, that are has consciousness on what's happening. Knowledge is good, no? But you add consciousness to that, then we go a further mile. And I think that is not only confined to a university setup. Is consciousness, can consciousness be also cultivated using social media now, or the technology we have now? I think it can, but personal interactions must also go hand in hand with that, because consciousness develops when you interact with people that are not only your own mirror self. So marrying technology, knowledge from the information you get, and adding to that consciousness that you can do something good. Can be done more broadly with this opportunity.
It's actually quite interesting what you're saying, and while you're talking about that, I was also like thinking about one thing you said a couple minutes ago, or you were joking actually about people being cynical, right? And isn't it the case that like the millennials, or even what's the generation called after the millennials? Generation Y? No.
Now this I don't know.
I always get confused with those letters.
Letters.
But,
Y.
Yeah, whatever. Let's say the ones that are anywhere between 18 and 35 or something. Probably still millennials, no? Most accurate term, I guess.
Yes.
So
because they said I'm still millennial. They say it's from 80 up. Some will contest that no, it's 85.
Yeah, what generation Z? Z? Yeah.
Maybe.
All right. Anyway, so we know who we're talking about.
I cannot talk about Akbayan youth anymore this time, not knowing what's millennial XYZ.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, and speaking about being cynical, I mean, like, yeah, you always hear this criticism that people are a bit detached from things and are kind of like analyzing stuff from the outside, events and politics especially, and that there is not a lot of willingness to kind of make a commitment to anything really, and of course it's painted with a very broad brush, but I think maybe one could say, or it's an interesting question, like you have all those phenomena like social media and more of a grassroots approach and ideas of more of a direct democracy, etc., where the question then will be, are parties maybe even getting superfluous? I mean, maybe you don't need parties anymore in that, and people kind of and adding to this, that people kind of became more or have grown to be cynical for good reasons in many cases, but have been disillusioned with the political system that we have. My question is, I mean, do you see it that way, or would you say, I mean, if you want to change the world for the better, for lack of a better description, you still need to join a party of whatever particular strand you want, but like you still need to do that. I mean, what do you think is like, what's the reality today?
Well, of course, I'm a hardcore party politician. I think for what it's worth now is getting more organized, because those that we are against, or the system we are against, is also organized. The more disintegrated, disorganized we become, then the more easy for us to be exploited. And this is a classic mission for activists and for somebody who works in the party. It is, to me, especially in the Philippines and to many parts of the world, where even more and more people are getting disillusioned with political institutions. My initial, or my belief on that is, while more and more are getting disillusioned, it's then needed for more and more to get into a party, to make it a vehicle for more people to access power. People are allergic to power.
Yeah. What do you mean? I mean, in what regard?
Because they always equate power to political chaos or political power struggle or trade.
What, that somehow corrupts people? Is that the idea?
Yes, and only established people, elite institution, only those that wanted a profile in the political landscape. I think power is underestimated in the level of so many communities, and organizing is that, making people realize that power is being underestimated at the level where we could actually get that power. But we cannot do that alone. The elites can do this on their own. Corporations can do this on their own. And I think that image and that impression, aside from, and let me get back to that later, aside from of course, our problems structurally. I think that impression and face of power, that image of power, makes people feel disconnected to politics in general. And for a party like us, who analyzed that, of course, there had been models before where ordinary people organized their party, took power, do something good about this. Then we can do this also here. Of course, that's easier said than done. But Akbayan now is 21 years. We are still here. And I would say we have the biggest membership as a political party in the Philippines. It's just that we have the membership from those that we are organizing in communities that are marginalized. So our image of power is different, but that's what also attracts us to ordinary people and families.
Yeah. So, but you're also quite unique in that regard, no? I mean, like the party system works quite different in the Philippines compared to Germany, right? I mean, like, so usually, I mean, how do parties usually work here, and why is Akbayan different?
Yes, it's very hard sometimes to explain it to Filipinos and more so to non-Filipinos.
Yeah.
Of course, there's a modern political party system in Germany. Here it's almost non-existent, in a sense that let's say it's so weak. The party system is that people are not serious in organizing the parties. We have a tradition before of a two-party system, which contest the institutions. After martial law, the party system, so many mushroomed after martial law. It opened the space for different parties, but it's not a membership-based, not a program-based party system. So our politics is not only elitist but personality-based. That more and more parties pick candidates who are already popular, because secondary would be the program and secondary would be the membership. So if you can run it by money, popularity, or if you're near the halls of already sitting power, then your party then your party becomes powerful at some point.
Okay.
And then you just shift. So this is something that are surprising for non-Filipinos. Parties just shift. So if you have a winner this period, you get all or most of the members in both houses.
Yeah.
But if you lose, then your party now move to the new center of power.
It's turncoatism. I'm right. I mean,
Yes,
I'm
yes.
always, for me, I grew up where, like, in SPD, like if your family was in SPD, then that was part of your family history, no? Or like a different analogy would be like you're from a city and then you root for this basketball team or soccer team or whatnot. Parties work the same, so you're not supposed to change, But it's very different. Yeah.
And it's very hard to change by law. Akbayan has been advocating for political party reform, that at least it makes costly politically for politicians just to shift allegiances.
And why did that never come about?
Because those that have been on that system for so long will not make legislation against themselves. So it's practically disallowing the political clans, the political families, the franchise, disallowing them for the franchise of that seats, and allowing parties to be more powerful than clans, than their business interests, because that would mean that the party has a control over its membership, at least in their seats.
Okay, so strengthening parties. I imagine one of the key issues is party financing, right?
Yes.
And what are the concrete measures that would make that a reality? And second, is that, I mean, can we hope for this to happen at any time soon, or you don't see any any hope at all?
Well, party finance. One, there should be limit on one person.
So no dynasties, political dynasties, like this idea that
yes,
the whole
and
families
owning financially a party.
Okay.
Meaning, there should be a limit to how much you can donate. Second, parties should be able to get funds from the state, so that you don't rely on one business interest, on one clan interest to finance your party activities. This part of financing, but it should go also beyond that, because one pillar of political reform is financing. Another is how parties are also organized.
Okay.
Because people are not serious about strengthening parties, then you just shift. Doesn't cost you anything to just shift allegiances, and you don't need to be ideologically distinct, which is something distinct for Akbayan, and sometimes it's odd that you're talking much of platform, program, ideology, while others don't capitalize on that. Akbayan is different as a membership-based, mass-based party, as an ideologically distinct party, which is not the case in Philippine political parties. That's one or two pillars on party reform. Will that happen anytime soon? No. Not in the next 3 years. If the balance of forces in the Houses, in the Senate, will remain the same. Will it happen after 3 years? Well, I hope. But the indicator will be what would be the balance of forces by then. If we can have the numbers to at least in the package of 1, 2, 3, 4, we get more parties or political players on that side, then we are inching. Or if not the politicians, which is not always the case, if we have a movement that creates the pressure, then of course it's very easy for us to negotiate with other parties. That come on, there is backing to this, and we have won laws, very difficult ones, not because parties have agreed to it, but because we have pressure outside, mass movement outside, that push and compelled parties to vote. Reproductive health, land reform.
Right.
These are almost impossible legislation, but because of movement from outside that backed or that also pushed Akbayan, and then thereafter pushed other parties, then we got it.
Yeah, this is an interesting point, the relationship between movements and the party program and taking up those initiatives and turning that into concrete political into a concrete political program, passing laws actually, and you pointed to quite a few successes that you had in that regard. Now, after I moved here and I started to observe the political landscape, and I always had the impression that there's one group of very educated and kind of progressive-minded people. You have a strong NGO scene. You have civil society is rather strong, and I think this is quite unique in Asia, right? Which makes it actually fun to work here. You have very educated people who are great to talk to. You can learn a lot, and people who really, don't only consider their jobs a job, but it's really kind of they're dedicated to that. No,
Oh, yeah.
It's like a calling. So that's great, and I think that Akbayan, draws, is a very strong magnet for those types of people, which is great. But I always kept wondering if that isn't also somehow a limitation to the reach it can have. So, I mean, if you look at all the issues in society here, I can't help but wonder, why isn't Akbayan stronger? Why aren't there many more people who are giving their vote to them? Because there seems to be so much need for reform. You see, in spite of the fact that you have very strong GDP growth for a long time, almost 7%, one of the strongest growing economies in Asia. Certainly in Southeast Asia, yes, you have an emerging middle class, but for the most part, there's no real trickle down effect. No, it's not like, the poverty, the percentage of poor people almost remains the same. There's some poverty reduction, but it's still 20%, and I think we're talking about less than $6 a day, and then there's, I think, 9% of people who live on not even $1.20 a day, right? So it's like still like incredibly high and heartbreaking poverty. And the question is like, okay, you've tried all kinds of different political regimes since the Marcos era, and nothing. Of course, there's always some changes here and there, and some are better than others, but nothing really structurally changed, right? And so, why then is it not that people say at some point, okay, we've had enough, we want to give it a shot and give power to people who might change things actually, So why is that not happening? What's your explanation?
Why, despite of so many efforts on progressive legislation, why, despite being a party with 100,000 ordinary people involved in the party, why are we still this way? Why are we not winning? That's the frank observation. It's something that speaks to the structural problems that can be connected to our point earlier. Why people are not into politics or disillusioned with politics. You see, after martial law, more than 30 years ago, the promise of democracy didn't reach the stomach and pockets of people. So we have been promised that institutions will work and this can uplift lives, which now political leaders emerge, parties emerge, promises in elections were heard, but they are still living the same way. For most people, this makes them disillusioned with politics in general and political institutions in general. It doesn't work in a way that is expected of, let's say, of us, also of us who's part of those that are engaging institutions. But why is it for Akbayan, you have this analysis, you're saying that the people is your priority, and the NGOs are with us. We are breaking through on spaces since 1998 that wasn't co-opted before by traditional politicians. But we are not yet going beyond this traditional base. I am proud to say that unions, organized rural workers, we have also young people in the party, but this does not yet reach the other segments of society enough to tilt the balance of power in, let's say, provinces or cities, for example, like here in Pasig. And it's very hard to organize if people are hungry, if people are angry with politicians, if people's time would cost them their meal the next day. That's why people are vulnerable. Poor Filipinos are vulnerable to patronage system, something that's structurally rooted in our politics here. That is very difficult to crack even as a progressive party. We are going against a system that's here for a very long time. You know, there is a fee, no? Membership dues that we ask members to keep the party in its operations. When we do an orientation seminar, they will ask, why are you asking us for money? We should be asking money from you.
Yeah.
The politicians should be giving us money. And Akbayan comes here asking for us to pay you. And then you have another orientation. How important for us not to be captured by money in politics. So we must be patient in engaging impoverished communities, ordinary citizens, marginalized from politics. We must be able to communicate without losing patience that we are working something together here, and we are not like the politicians you're used to. That's why we're not yet winning, Johannes. We need political reform that's institutional, something we can do with laws. We need pressure from the ground on these laws. Not only political reform, but welfare policies, for example.
Yeah, but okay, let's talk about that in a minute. But I think this is of course the most critical if you're talking about getting the vote from the poor segments of society, right? But I mean, if you're talking about getting the middle class or even lower middle class people like that, is that also part of the plan? And I guess that the strategy to to get those people to vote for you must be quite different. Or there's a different challenge, I guess, right? So it's not the same. I mean, those people have more options, obviously, than the poorer people, and are also better educated. But is it then maybe more of a messaging kind of issue? I mean, do you have an appealing narrative for those people to buy into, or is that actually not really what you're after? I mean, what's the thinking on this?
When we started the party, our currency is that this will be the party of ordinary citizens. I think it still works for us in some segments, no? That you have ownership in the politics that we espouse. But as I said, we need to be more than that. there are segments of the population who are looking for solutions to problems. So we are working hard on passing laws that not only focus on political reform, but on economic, social well-being. Yeah, but there are also people who are attracted by modern, young, fresh take on politics, and young people are attracted to that, aspiring more, but are unlike the others that have come before us. But those three have different strategies. We need a compelling narrative that ties it all up. From your being a party of the ordinary people to a party that delivers, and a fresh, modern party that takes us to the future.
Yeah.
I will have to write it down, and then
Yeah.
and to be honest, these are all things that we are conscious about. But what's the compelling narrative now in the context where there is authoritarian tendency, fake news, still deep poverty? What ties that tree?
Yeah, well, my hunch would be, I mean, like, yeah.
Is it we are the party for the people's well-being? I don't have clearance on that yet.
It sounds actually quite compelling to me. Yeah, party for the people's well-being. That's actually quite nice.
Yeah, but it's interesting that you said narrative, because a narrative does not change like election slogans.
That's correct. Yeah.
We have one for this election. That we are an action-oriented party that provides solution, but the narrative, like the party for the well-being of Filipino families, we will have to process this and look into not only the electoral battle this midterm, but where we want to take our people in this very critical historical juncture.
Yeah.
We are conscious that what we said 20 years ago may not capture who we want to convince at this point.
The party for the well-being. I mean, yeah, it's actually quite a cool slogan. I like that actually. Well, I guess there's many different angles to it. No, I mean that's also what makes it kind of maybe a nice umbrella term, but I mean, one obvious, and you mentioned that before a couple of minutes ago, one obvious aspect would be, a stronger welfare state, no? I mean, like, which is obviously something that's needed here, besides investment in education and more equality in terms of more equality when it comes to chances, that people can actually climb the social ladder. How are you going to do that when you come from a slum somewhere, as opposed to somebody who was born with all the wealth in the world in Makati, right? So that obviously there's a big disconnect, and it's a job of politics, in my view, to somehow balance that out, no? But I mean, like, I still think there is a valid. I mean, easier said than done. This is one thing, and two, of course, there are some valid questions that need to be answered. For instance, how do you let's say you developed some very compelling and good and progressive welfare ideas and plans that you could put into action. But then, of course, it needs to be paid for, right? And
yes.
And
Yes.
one obvious question is, where does the money come from, and doesn't that then cause problems with growth?
Yes.
And I mean, like, how does it work? I mean, like, how does this work? Because after all, I mean, like, yes, it's obviously, economic growth here in the Philippines hasn't really reached the people who most need it all that much, but still there is some progress. So if there was a recession and the economy it wouldn't look better, So the question is, how do you tackle this potential conflict there?
Well, it's a conflict at the lowest point of our economy, and it has still become a conflict when our economy was better. I think what has not been attended to on where is the money is how we want to tax people in the Philippines, and how we want to tax corporate interest in this country. That's one classic where is the money.
So do you have any suggestions on taxation? Is there anything concrete that you've already worked out? Or?
Well, in when we were still part of the previous government, we wanted to raise tax on a particular segment, of the income bracket. But we left the non-wage. We left the minimum wage earners not to pay tax because our minimum wage is so low.
Right.
What we wanted then, because there is a momentum of economic growth. So one thing is tax, some bracket, but we wanted not to stick with not taxing your minimum wage earners. So we would have wanted that when growth was developing, it shouldn't be a jobless growth, no? But something that would also create jobs enough for them not to be minimum wage earners, so that people can pay tax. One criticism then was jobless growth and non-trickling down or non-redistributive growth. The interest of getting the money, I think, is there from all walks of society. Who pays what is the conflict point. In our package of health, for example, our Health for All package, of course, the question to us when our party leader RePhil Cabreros was running, where do you get the money? We showed a computation that it can be done, and experts have attested that it can be done without new tax, with only existing money. And then we showed how preventive measures will also save money for the state. I think in the welfare package for Akbayan, if we are talking about, okay, we want to strengthen the social welfare system, I think there are sectors already that we have computed that can be done without new taxes, that can be done with the existing economic level that we are in. But of course, we can do more. If industries are good, taxation is made progressive as not regressive, but it would be an entire economic agenda that not only Akbayan as a center-left party must agree on, the unions must be able to agree, businesses must be able to agree. Something
you need a common consensus, no? Like a new common consensus. I think, like, also if you look at the
something that is not yet achieved.
Yeah, it's obviously not there yet. Yeah, I think, to me it makes a lot of sense to say, what you really need, and that's actually the best form of welfare, is to give decent jobs to people, no? And like what you need is actually, you need to create jobs in the Philippines that come with enough security and of course decent pay as well, so that people can actually, all profit from growth. And Yeah, and again, politics is there to kind of create the framework, the rules, so that happens, and that people don't get exploited for maybe the short benefit of a few. Where if you look at that, in the long run or even in the mid to long run, everyone will be doing much better if wealth was distributed, income was distributed more equally. It makes society safer. For example, you see the huge costs here of security. So this is not really a moral issue. It's more of I would say it's really like a strategic issue. Where the Philippines is headed and where the leaders in the country wants it to go.
I agree with you. It's not only a moral issue. I think welfare investment is a very practical one. Saves the state can save. The arguments would always it's wasteful. But how much do we spend when people are already in their terminal case their health? How much do we pay when the streets are chaotic? How much do we pay if people don't have jobs? It's costing us more. And in our old age, there is nothing to get. So it's not a bleeding heart issue. This is highly political, practical, and yes, strategic, because how we invest now, not only the government sitting, because that is also a popular thing to achieve, giving out something for the welfare this time, but it saves us also for the next generation to come. So I agree fully, because one debunking argument, they don't know the strategic implications of this. This is a wasteful proposal, something which we can debunk as welfare advocates.
Again, I think there's different angles to it. No, obviously there needs to be a redistribution, but in the end, it's really also about creating an environment where decent work can happen, and also for the employers to realize that they will do much better with that. No, because also if we think about things like automation and the advances in technology, of course, that will also put many jobs in danger, or we see, not only for the employees, also for the employers, because of course you have this whole phenomenon that big corporations are not outsourcing anymore to countries like the Philippines, but actually do this stuff with the help of technology in their own countries. So it's quite complex, but I think what people need to realize in each society, well, in the end, with the big issues like climate change, we all sit in the same boat, I would say, as world citizens, but then also each country, because after all, the national states are still very like the central elements in our international system. So then in each national context, also I think people need to sit down together and realize, okay, we're in this together. Nobody is in the, again, mid to long run going to profit if they kind of exploit others and build a fence around them. That's just simply not going to work anymore. So I think it's more that people need to realize that they operate as a team, and obviously the people who are stronger or had more luck or are more capable in a society should also be the ones to contribute more. On the other hand, I also think that of course redistribution and welfare, etc., can also not be meant to make people not want to become entrepreneurial anymore. Like a small company still needs to have, I as a small entrepreneur, I don't know, like somebody who owns a car repair shop or something, I still need to have my incentives to work hard and employ people, and if in the end that doesn't, if I just pay too much taxes and and I cannot reap the benefits of my hard work, and why am I going to employ people, or why am I going to do this in the first place, or maybe I can't employ more people because it doesn't make economic sense. So those questions need to be addressed as well.
Yeah.
And of course it is all complex, but in the end, again, I think everyone is there in it together, no?
Yeah, but you use the term consensus. So the hardest ones to be on board are fewer.
Yeah.
And if we get this large segment, including the entrepreneurs, to agree on it, then it could make a powerful argument, you know, that this is not only a left issue, and this is not only an ideological issue. So one thing is having a program. The hardest part is getting the consensus to that. But there are untapped sectors in an economic program, which I think would also create a momentum for the movement to having new partners and allies on this field. Well, something we can develop. You have a narrative, a compelling one, and then you have a program that creates a broad consensus outside your traditional conversation partners or allies. And then you change political structures. Maybe that's how we can win.
Yeah, exactly. See, so it was very useful to do this podcast after all. No, it's all in front of you. I'm kidding. No, but you're right. I mean, those I think are the important points, and yeah, at some point you need to give it the best shot you got, no, and hopefully find some new consensus or help shape a new kind of common goal that people aspire to. Now,
changes their perception about parties.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I completely agree. In the end, there need to be some structural changes. Otherwise, it will all somehow stay the same. No matter who's running the show politically. You know, in the end, it's all going to be the same players, and that's obviously not good for everyone else. RePhil, definitely the mandatory refill. I was going to ask you also a little bit about your work on the on the regional level. You work with other social democratic parties in the region. You've also been to Europe and other parts of the world in this with this gig, and I mean, how do you see developments in Asia, maybe particularly in Southeast Asia? I mean, like, is this phenomenon that we talked about of Akbayan, is it something you see in other countries as well? I mean, like, is that quite similar, or is this kind of a unique case here?
Well, as coordinator of SocDem Asia, of course, I will have to say that what we are working on is not only what Akbayan is doing in the Philippines to be a credible winning party, but also linking like-minded parties who have the same ideological line and working for the same constituency. But there are actually better parties also in the region that we can look at in terms of campaigning, in terms of alliance work, in terms of winning, for example. Equally, there are also parties that we can unlearn methods from, that we can examine failures from. Social democracy is not popular, to say the least, in this part of the world. And what we're trying to do here in our network is to combine lessons of combine good lessons, practical, programmatic lessons with understanding where we are lagging behind, understanding the changing political and economic landscape in the region, and how we can, as political players, be at par or proceed with the times. We are operating in 13 countries in the region. Southeast Asia, the biggest party membership. We have very old parties. We also have new parties. We have parties that are driven by peasant organizations. We have parties that have majority young people as their members. We have opposition parties and parties in power. I will not enumerate them.
Sure.
We have it in our website with shameless plugging. It's SocDem.com. But what we are doing in the region is unique in a sense that there is no other platform that is center left, organized in this manner as SocDem Asia. So we are investing on these as parties, because it's a unique platform for us on sharing experiences. It's also a platform to strategically see how we want to organize the future, and it's a platform where we train our structures, our activists on what is required to be able to face these challenges in the changing times, in terms of skills, analysis, in terms of methodology.
Right.
It's something that we rolled out a few years ago, but we are more institutionalizing now through an academy.
That sounds very interesting. I mean, like, I want to take you up on one thing that you said. You said in this part of the world, social democracy is not really popular and has a very, very tough. It's in a tough spot, right? It's always it's an uphill battle. It seems all the time. So why is that so? I mean, okay. On the other hand, we also have to say, obviously, in Europe or the States at the moment, it's not like this particular brand of politics is doing so great either. But why, in particular, in Asia, is that such a problem?
One, during the Cold War, there's McCarthyism.
Yeah.
So this historical
The Red Scare
period made socialism, social democracy, a very bad ideological strand. This Red Scare, red tagging, and it sank in people's consciousness to many parts of Asia, particularly in Southeast Asia. I think that's one. And there are still generation who has believed this. But this is not only because of the propaganda of McCarthyism. I would say that there are also socialist parties that in the name of socialism did very bad things over the history, which are not good models for people seeking a political path. There is a socialist party who killed millions in the name of socialism. There are socialist parties that had been neoliberals, that destroyed economies, that destroyed welfare. There are socialist parties, social democratic parties who just lost touch of our rootedness with the social movements and the grassroots. So over the course of this ebb
Yeah.
in our history. It's not only McCarthyism that is
Right.
at fault, but also how we run our parties as socialist social democrats in this part of the world. That created a not consolidated image that social democracy is something, or socialism or democratic socialism is something good, viable, and influential. Because one, it was destroyed. Two, it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Three, there are those who have promised but failed on their own promises of welfare and their own image as a party of the people. It's difficult in this landscape, especially with people that had gone through authoritarian regimes, with people who had gone through colonization. So you have colonization, authoritarianism, and then the promise of a better political way, which had not been so successful. One thing in SocDem Asia is looking at models which we can replicate or call inspiration from. That, you know, if this works in Penang.
Yeah. Then we can do it here maybe too, right? So that's kind of the idea.
Yeah. But it's also having a new generation
Yeah, yeah.
to build on this, because there are heroes of the left movement in Asia that we look up to. So you have, you know, from Gandhi to Sukarno. In Indonesia, the father of democratic socialism. We have here, I don't know if young people still know the father of the Workers' Party here. But we don't have the contemporary figures or the contemporary political leaders that you can look up to and say, okay, the way this leader had uplifted people or had inspired people. It's very hard to do now. And the populists and the resurgence of dictators are capturing that image.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also thinking that exactly because you bring up that point, I'm also thinking maybe an additional point is also maybe a question of values, right? I mean, like my impression always was, that in Asia people are very susceptible, or if you will, vulnerable in a sense to this idea of the tough father figure, the guy who kind of with law and order. I mean, this is obviously not limited to Asia. I mean, it's obviously we see that everywhere in the world, that the people kind of seem to, for whatever reason, think that this is necessary to lead societies, particularly when there's problems. But especially here, I think I always had the impression that this is something that flies very well, and maybe that this is not really the strength of social democrats in general. No, I mean, this is not the way. When we talk about the idea of the party for the well-being of Filipinos, kind of different from like the party who gets shit done. We're the ones who the straight talk and da. It's a very different kind of idea, no? And so. But what about other? So this is maybe one thing, but also other values, I guess, that are. I mean, I don't know. What about solidarity? What about things of like somehow sacrificing also for people outside of your immediate family, and contributing to the society, even if that means that you don't make as much profits as you could maybe, or I mean, like what about those kind of ideas that I think very strong in the middle class, for example, in Europe,
Yeah. Well, for one, as I said earlier, this phenomenon here in the Philippines what we have in this under this political climate had been because of people getting disillusioned by the promise of something will change, and they have seen and have given chance to many leaders that had come before. And the promise of solving the problems in 3 to 6 months really captured, maybe I will
Quick
lose
fix.
on some, but I will win on some. I will have to wait longer for some, but at least I have a quick fix on
Yeah.
something. I think that would be dangerous for social democrats, for democratic socialists to fit ourselves into. Because there are some who are trying, that by rhetoric we should be like it, by promise we should be like it. I think that's very dangerous, because it defeats the struggle that we will earn, changes not by fooling, not by rhetorical
Like false promises, etc.
false
right? Yeah.
promises, not by quick fixes, because we should be better in understanding complexities and doing something despite that complexity. So falling to the trap of what populists now are doing would be dangerous for us. Well, that makes us unpopular, yes. But if being popular would cost us a strategic outlook and project in our politics, then we just become the people that we are going against eventually. Why are people susceptible to this at the moment globally? Because globalization is not fair, because political institutions are disconnected to daily lives, because promises have not been fulfilled. But how do we fix that? We do not fix it how the enemies are trying to fix it. I think if social democrats and democratic socialists sticks to the values you said, because this is in the end, the bottom line here is your values, where you get your politics from. So I think as cliche but as timeless and consistent as it is, what does it mean for solidarity here? What's the program of solidarity here? How do we communicate solidarity here? That's the way to go, not how we copy or how we tweak the way others are doing it. I think if we stick on solving that program of solidarity, communicating solidarity, building consensus, and fixing brokenness.
So you talked about, it's interesting, you talked about like the exchange with other social democratic parties in the region, but I would also be interested in hearing from you how you see social democracy in the West, in the global North. Just some observations, because you've also traveled there extensively. And given that social democracy, I think, is in a pretty deep crisis, and has been for some time. What are your observations? What have you seen? What you can learn from, even the mistakes from those parties in this part of the world, and what can we maybe learn from you guys here? What's your take on this?
Well, I'm very privileged to have traveled to different countries in Europe and observed this for some years now. My impression in my very last travel, that this is really sad now, what is happening. if this can happen to Europe, then what's happening here or what's happening in Latin America is not rare, because in Europe where it's the institutions are fixed, values are in place for institutions, education is high, institutions are modern. This still could happen. Then it's really sad getting back there and seeing this, and people also getting desperate at this time where wealth is at its peak, where Europe supposedly is a wealthier Europe at this time. One friend or friends I interact with speaks also of what I already said. Yeah, that we are self-examining because we have been in government for a time. We are proud of what we have achieved. We are proud that of the welfare we have established. But we are also self-examining now how we cope with the times, because movement is changing, times are changing, technology is changing. And how we organize society then is not the same as how we want to organize society now. To me that's humility, but that is also outlook that we cannot stick with the same formula because times are changing and we become obsolete, and and there will be disservice if we do not cope with the times. That's one lesson. Other lapses are there are experiments that didn't deliver in terms of structural adjustment that added to this unequal economic structure. And some had happened when our friends have been governing.
Yeah, you're talking about the alluding to the welfare reforms, etc. in Germany back in the day. So
and not only in Germany, in other countries. And this I get from our friends. No, I don't get this from the critics. There are explanations to that are also useful. They say we had to sacrifice at certain point to be able to save 10 years ahead. Those are some of the explanations. Some had broken away from the party because of these hard decisions at that time. But what had happened in Germany, which saves Germany in some sectors, no, is not the same as the other countries.
Yeah, sure.
As what the other countries had experienced. Third and fourth, let's go to the good ones. The workers' movement, creating parties and sustaining up to now after 100 years, I think is one of the biggest lessons political parties in SocDem Asia can learn from. It is taking the matters into your own hands and doing something about it. Second is really programmatic welfare, which had been introduced many years ago and has not been introduced in some countries here. So how you organize that in Europe is something I had learned from, something I still want to continue to learn from, and something we exchange also between SocDem Asia and our sister parties in Europe. Good ones and bad ones. Lessons that are showing us that this can be done, and lessons that no, at this time you cannot do that anymore. So there are things that we don't need to reinvent, but there are also things that you cannot copy.
Right.
So to be effective, parties or students of politics should be discerning in looking at these lessons and doing something useful about it. So far, the exchanges have been good.
Interesting. Yeah. That's certainly very interesting. One last question, Machris. Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Still a democratic socialist, still akbayan, and off to new adventures. But hopefully still consistent with my values. This is not so cheesy at this point, because this is also something I want to tell myself. Despite the challenges, of everyday Philippine politics.
You have to believe. Reminds me of those posters from back in the day, like with the aliens. Believe.
Really, because that is something to keep me going. That stubbornness of we will get there.
Right.
That stubbornness of this too will pass. The stubbornness that I got friends in the headquarters. I got my family, and I got people from all over the place outside the Philippines who has the same thing.
All right. It's been fascinating talking to you. Thank you very much. Lots of insights. I really enjoyed it. And best of luck with your stubbornness and with all the rest of it. And all the best.
Thank you, Johannes. Thank you.
Thank you.